Undercover, CEO orders coffee stops when she admits working 3 jobs. 3 jobs a day and still not enough to pay rent. Michael Foster looked up. He was still holding the order slip when that sentence hit him like a punch to the chest. It wasn't said loudly. It carried no anger, no bitterness. Just a quiet sigh so soft as if the speaker didn't even expect anyone to hear. But he had heard it, and he couldn't ignore it. Midtown in the morning was just like any other day: hurried footsteps, the click of heels on sidewalks, the smell of fresh pastries and roasted coffee drifting from storefronts along the street. New Dawn Caf location number 12 nestled on the corner of 7th Avenue like a small haven in a city always in motion. Michael Foster stepped inside like any other customer. Beanie pulled low, dark overcoat, slightly scuffed leather shoes. No one paid him any attention. No one recognized that the middle-aged man was the founder of New Dawn, a brand he had built from nothing nearly 3 decades ago. He walked slowly, eyes scanning every table, every counter, not to inspect, but to feel, not as a CEO, but as a guest. Then he paused in front of the barista counter. "Good morning. What can I get for you?" the girl behind the counter asked. Her smile was bright but slightly tired. Michael answered softly, keeping his tone low and even. "1 cappuccino. And a quiet seat, if possible." She nodded and started her routine motions. As the milk steamer hummed, a younger colleague leaned in and whispered, "Was second shift okay last night?" "Fine," she answered briefly. "You working at the restaurant again?" "Yeah. I'll probably have to borrow more this weekend, otherwise I can't cover rent." Michael stood still. His hand tightened slightly around his wallet. The cappuccino wasn't ready yet, but the whispered exchange pierced him like a pin dropping onto stone. Her name was Rachel, according to the name tag pinned slightly off-center. Her hair was tied up, but a few strands had fallen loose. Her under-eye circles were faintly hidden with foundation, but still visible. "Your cappuccino?" Rachel placed the cup on the tray, adding a small muffin. "This one's from yesterday, but it's still good," she said gently, almost apologetically. Michael nodded in thanks. But as he walked away from the counter, he noticed something strange. She didn't ring up the muffin, didn't mark it as comped. She just handed it over and turned away. He sat by the window. The morning light angled through the frosted glass. Michael watched Rachel move between tables. She spoke gently, politely, but always avoided eye contact with the shift manager, a woman around 40, stern-faced with a red pen clipped to her collar like a permanent warning. An older customer left a $2 bill on the table. Rachel bent down to pick it up, but before she could pocket it, the manager raised a hand. "Tips go in the jar. You know the rules." "Yes, sorry," Rachel said softly. She placed the money in the shared tip jar at the center of the counter. But in that moment, Michael noticed something small. Rachel didn't look at the jar. Her hand moved slowly as if she hesitated. Then she let go. Michael opened his notebook and jotted down "tip pooled." Not happy. Just then, a young woman walked up to the counter, speaking quickly. "Excuse me, are you Rachel? Were you at LaGrange Steakhouse last night?" Rachel froze, briefly, eyes uncertain. "I think you've got the wrong person." "No, I'm sure it was you. I saw you washing glasses during the whole shift." "Do you have 3 jobs?" Rachel smiled faintly. "Just for now. It's hard to make enough these days." Michael looked at her, and he saw it. Behind that smile was a storm being held back. No one else in the caf noticed, but he did, because he was looking for what financial reports and customer surveys could never show him. And now he had found it. That girl, Rachel, didn't need saving, but she deserved to be understood and to be asked the right questions. Another employee approached Rachel and whispered something. She nodded and hurried toward the back, toward the break room door. Michael silently counted her footsteps. When the door clicked shut, he stood up. He left the cappuccino nearly untouched. Not because the coffee wasn't good, but because a different journey had just begun, right inside his own calf. New Dawn Calf location number 12 sat quietly on the corner of 7th Street and Mason Avenue, Midtown. A familiar Chicago street corner where blue buses stopped like clockwork, where office workers picked up their morning lattes before diving into long days and students reviewed notes in the corner seat near the only outlet. The calf had exposed brick walls, dark wood floors, and a bar counter lined with clean gray-white stone. Warm yellow lights hung from the ceiling, casting a soft glow that fought off the grayness outside. The aroma of freshly roasted coffee was both bold and gentle, just enough to make passersby step in for a deep breath. Michael Foster sat alone at a small table by the window. From there, he had a full view of the calf, both the prep area and the long benches lining the walls. On the table next to his slowly cooling cappuccino sat a small leather notebook. He jotted notes slowly, but his eyes kept drifting up as if waiting for something that financial reports could never capture. Once again, his gaze moved to the bar. There Rachel, the young barista with hurriedly tied hair, was slicing a muffin. She worked neatly, carefully, not letting a single crumb fall. Whenever a customer ordered, she gave a polite little bow and a smile that never quite reached her eyes. It felt rehearsed, emotionless. Rachel looked around 24, maybe younger without makeup. Ink stains dotted her hands, the kind you only get from taking notes with real paper. When she counted tips at the end of her shift, her fingers trembled slightly. Her eyes darted around before she slipped the cash into her personal wallet as if unsure she was even allowed to. To her left stood Laura, the morning shift lead. She watched each employee with a scrutinizing gaze. Tall, broad-shouldered digital watch on one wrist and always carrying a red pen. Laura didn't yell, but her words came out laced with impatience. When a new hire fumbled, placing a cappuccino on a tray, Laura only gave her a glance before muttering, "Spill it next time and it's coming out of your paycheck." No one responded. They were used to it. At a table near the counter, Greg, an older man, probably around 60, wearing a knit cap and a faded khaki jacket, sat reading his paper. Greg was a regular, same time every day. Same order, black coffee, no sugar, no ice. He smiled at Rachel as she handed him the cup and whispered, "She's still working here after that night." Rachel paused for a beat, then nodded. "Still got enough strength, Uncle." Place like this, it's rare to see someone stay that long. Only the coffee stays the same. Michael wrote that down. It felt like he had just heard a secret everyone knew, but no one wanted to say aloud. A young woman placed a separate tip on Rachel's tray. Rachel thanked her, about to slip it into her pocket, when Laura approached, picked up the bill, and dropped it into the plastic tip jar at the center of the bar. "How many times do I have to say it? Tips go here." Rachel just bowed her head. Michael looked at the tip jar. On it was a printed label, "Tips are shared equally per shift fare for everyone." But in his eyes, nothing about this felt fair. Another staff member, Jordan, brushed past Rachel and leaned in. "Were you at the gas station again last night?" Rachel nodded. "And tomorrow you've got the restaurant shift too. If I don't, how would I pay rent?" she replied quietly, still staring at the POS screen. Jordan shook his head, then whispered something else. Rachel froze, looked up her gaze, a strange mix of gratitude and caution. As if something had happened between them, something only the two of them knew. Michael wrote another line. In the corner near the free bookshelf for customers, he noticed a small whiteboard titled Employee of the Month. The photo was of someone else, not Rachel. That person had already quit. He remembered it from last week's HR report. But the photo was still there. No one had updated it. He wondered why just then Rachel turned toward his table holding a pitcher of water. "Would you like anything else, sir? No?" "Thank you." She smiled. Her eyes brushed across his notebook. "Are you writing something? Oh, just a few notes this morning?" "Work notes." He paused a beat. "Yes. You could say that." She nodded, then walked away. Michael remained seated, but his heart was no longer at ease. Beneath the gentle atmosphere, something was being held back. Every word, every glance, every small action carried another layer of meaning. And he knew to understand the full picture he would have to stay longer than planned. The little bell above the door rang again as a new group of customers entered, bringing with them a breeze of early autumn cold and the faint scent of perfume. Rachel quickly stood up straight, adjusted her apron, and returned to her position behind the counter. Sunlight had finally pierced through the morning haze, casting long, slanting beams across the floor. But inside Michael, everything was dimming. He hadn't left. His first cappuccino was still almost untouched, but he decided to order a second drink not because he was thirsty, but because he needed a reason to observe longer. "One latte light foam," he said slowly. Rachel nodded, still wearing the same thin, mechanical smile. As she turned her back, thinking she was out of earshot, a sentence slipped out quiet, but to Michael it landed like a breathless sob. "If just one job was enough to live, I wouldn't have had to sleep in my car these past few weeks." Michael didn't move, but his chest tightened. That wasn't a complaint. No one talks about sleeping in their car so casually unless they're used to it. Not one night. Not one time. Clearly, this wasn't just about low wages. This was survival. A young employee stepped out from the break room, heard the comment, but simply rolled his eyes and walked on. No one reacted. Perhaps because they'd all heard it before. Michael looked down and wrote clearly in his notebook, 3 jobs, still sleeps in car. At that moment, Greg, the familiar older customer, murmured to the barista beside him, "That girl, she's been asking for full-time work for 6 months. Strange how the new hires all get steady shifts already." Michael heard it clearly. And he knew something about this smelled like injustice. Rachel returned, holding the latte, placing it gently on the tray, as if afraid to spill even a drop. But just as she turned away, Laura's voice rang out, not loud, but ice-cold. "Rachel, adding orders on your own again, you know the policy." Rachel froze. The guest ordered a latte. "I just entered the correct item." "What about the muffin, giving those away again, or did you take it from yesterday's batch and forget to report it?" Rachel bit her lip gently, then stepped back. "Sorry. I'll log it properly in the POS." Laura said nothing more, just sighed and walked away. Michael felt something very deep and very wrong unfolding. There was no shouting, no open complaints. But the way Rachel lowered her head, the way she apologized even when she wasn't at fault, it was like someone had taught her that she always had to step back even when she'd done nothing wrong. He stood, walked to the counter, and picked up his latte. Rachel tried to smile, but this time she couldn't hide the weariness in her eyes. "Thank you," he said, then slowly returned to his seat. Behind him, a female customer spoke up. "You're Rachel, right? I saw you at the Green Mart gas station yesterday." "Do you work there too?" Rachel hesitated. "Yes, just a few evening shifts." "That's odd. I think I saw you at Sunrise Bakery too." Michael stopped mid-step. The young woman behind him replied with a sentence as light as wind, but one that made the whole calf freeze. "I work 3 jobs just to survive." No one said a word. Even Laura stayed silent. Michael slowly walked back to his table, his mind now crowded with puzzle pieces clicking into place, sleeping in the car. Working 3 jobs. No contract. Not allowed to receive direct tips, and that smile still on Rachel's lips like a mask could no longer hide the truth behind it. Something had to change. Rachel returned behind the counter. But this time, Michael noticed her pull out her phone, type a quick message, then erase it. Her eyes were locked on the screen, her lips pressed tight. Then she quickly slipped the phone into her apron pocket as Laura returned. Michael wrote one last line in his notebook before closing it, afraid of being seen. Hiding something. At that moment, he was no longer just a disguised business owner. He was a human being sitting inside his own calf and watching a piece of the soul of the system he built being silently crushed. Michael Foster didn't leave the calf at his usual time. He stayed, quietly observed for the next 3 hours like a silent shadow in the room. No one noticed. No one suspected. But every gesture, every light tap on the POS screen, every quick glance exchanged between employees, he saw it all. When the rush slowed, he stood up, walked slowly to the counter where Jordan, the young staff member, was washing glasses. "The coffee here is really good," Michael began. "But it seems like you all are under a bit of pressure." Jordan looked up and gave a strained smile. "Well, It's just normal, I guess. Most places are like this now. Ever short on staff? Michael asked as if just making morning conversation. Jordan chuckled and shook his head. Always short, man. But asking for more shifts, not that easy. I'm full-time, I'm already one of the lucky ones. Michael tilted his head, pretending to wonder. Heard some folks want more hours, but can't get them. Jordan hesitated for a moment, then lowered his voice. To be honest, if you're close to Laura, you get shifts. If not better, figure something out off the clock. What about tips? Are they split fairly? Jordan looked around, then let out a dry chuckle. They're split kind of selectively. Michael nodded, didn't ask more. He returned to his table and jotted notes. A little later, he struck up a conversation with another barista, a girl named Marcy. Petite, light brown hair, red string bracelet on her wrist. That girl, Rachel, she looks like a hard worker. Marcy glanced toward Rachel, who was wiping down tables near the exit, then gave a soft nod. She does everything. But she still hasn't been offered a contract. How long has she worked here? Almost 7 months. She's been asking for a while, but hasn't gotten it. At first, she had hope. Now she's just glad to keep her shifts. Michael nodded. Heard something about her sleeping in the car. Marcy pressed her lips together. We don't really dare ask. But one time I saw her asleep after a shift in the break room the whole night. When she got up, she still had the apron strap mark on her cheek. He thanked her, then walked back to his seat. Pieces were falling into place, and each one was heavier than the last. At the end of the morning shift, Rachel went behind the counter to collect her preliminary payroll slip from the POS. Her eyes scanned the number, then froze. 1 second. 2 seconds. Michael didn't look away. Rachel leaned slightly against the counter, hands gripping the slip. She tried to keep a calm face, but her shoulders dropped. A small tremble from deep in her chest nearly brought her to her knees. Just a flicker, but Michael caught it. She quickly stood straight, pulled a kitchen towel from her apron and wiped her face, not because of sweat, but to hide the redness in her eyes. Then she went back to work like nothing had happened. Michael tightened his grip on the notebook. The last page had only 3 words written on it. This isn't right. A little later, Laura walked past Michael. She paused, looked at him, then said, You a new regular? I don't think I've seen you before. Just visiting. Not from around here, he replied, smiling softly. Oh! If you notice any staff not being enthusiastic, feel free to speak up. We don't tolerate laziness here. Michael nodded, his eyes still fixed on Rachel as she cleared tables, picking up crumpled napkins, her hands red from the cleaning solution. At this moment, the audience was no longer on the outside. Every gaze had now been drawn into the quiet shell of this calf where a young woman was silently enduring, just so she wouldn't be seen as a burden. Every quiet word, every hesitant movement from her now carried more emotional weight than any dramatic monologue. No background music. No shaky cameras. Only truth unfolding slowly but undeniably. Michael knew the moment of decision was approaching, but still he waited. Still he watched. To change a system, he had to understand it completely without overlooking a single crack. The afternoon light had turned a soft shade of orange, filtering through the frosted calf windows. Sunlight stretched across the dark wooden floor, forming streaks of light that dragged like quiet sighs. New Dawn Calf was growing quieter, with only a few guests left sitting silently by their laptops, and the occasional sound of a spoon clinking gently against porcelain breaking the fragile stillness in the air. Rachel was still working. She cleaned tables more slowly than usual, not because she was tired, but because she didn't want to leave yet. For her, staying 1 more hour meant not having to return to the parking lot where an old car sat diagonally under a leafless maple tree where nights were so cold she had to sleep in her apron. Michael set his cup down. He had sat long enough. He had heard enough. And now it was time to stand up. He walked toward the counter. Laura was reviewing the end-of-day report from the POS. Her eyes glanced sideways when she saw Michael approach, slightly surprised that the silent customer all day was now choosing to speak up. Hello there. Can I get you anything else? She asked, trying to keep a professional tone. Michael placed both hands on the counter, his gaze steady and calm. I have a few questions about how tips are shared and how shifts are assigned at this location. The atmosphere changed. No one said a word, but everyone could feel it. A shell had just cracked. Laura paused. And you are a customer, Michael replied, but also someone who wants to understand why an employee here has to work 3 jobs and still sleep in her car. A spoon dropped to the floor behind them. No one picked it up. Laura clenched the printed report in her hands. I'm not sure who you're referring to. Michael didn't answer immediately. He turned his gaze to Rachel, who had just stepped out from the break room holding a small plastic bag with a few personal items. She froze, eyes meeting his, and for the first time she realized that his eyes weren't those of a customer, but of someone who knew. Someone who had seen everything. He turned back to Laura, his voice low but clear enough for everyone to hear. You know exactly who I'm talking about. Laura shifted her stance. If you have concerns, you can contact our management department. And what are you? Michael asked. I'm the team leader, but I don't control shift assignments. Everything follows company procedures. So, what procedure allows an employee to work here for almost a year without a contract? What policy makes it okay for your best morning shift worker to take 2 other jobs just to survive? By now, several employees nearby had stopped what they were doing. Jordan Marcy, all eyes were on the counter. Laura's voice rose slightly. I follow policy. If someone can't handle the pressure, they can leave. Michael stepped closer, his eyes sharp as ice. No. You didn't follow policy, and I'm not a customer. He pulled a small wallet from his jacket pocket and took out a silver-badged employee card with the New Dawn logo. Michael Foster, founder of this company. The entire calf seemed to lose its sound. Rachel stood frozen in the aisle, plastic bag trembling in her hand. Greg, the older customer, folded his newspaper and looked up at Michael with a slow gaze of respect he had never shown all morning. Laura went pale. I didn't know you didn't know or you didn't care, Michael cut in, his voice no longer soft. I built New Dawn on one core principle: no one should have to sacrifice their dignity just to keep a job. A young employee whispered, is he really the CEO? No one answered. But they all knew. Michael continued, I've sat here all day watching how you split tips, how you deny shifts using the excuse of not close enough, how a young worker washes dishes at night and serves customers in the morning just so she has a place to sleep in her car. And no one, not a single person, speaks up because they're afraid of losing their jobs. A wave of emotion rippled through the room like a quiet storm building just before the thunder. Laura tried to stay composed. I only did what I thought was best for the store. Really, then, let me show you what your best looks like. He pulled out his phone and played a recording audio of a conversation between Rachel and a coworker about sleeping in her car, accompanied by security footage from the CAF accessed earlier that morning using his executive-level credentials. The clip showed Laura collecting all the tips that customers had deliberately left for specific staff. No one said a word. No explanation was needed. The truth was speaking for itself. Michael turned off the video. His gaze softened as he looked toward Rachel. You don't have to carry this alone anymore. She didn't respond. But for the first time that day, she looked straight ahead, no longer avoiding eye contact. Michael stood still for a beat, then slowly removed his beanie. His salt and pepper hair was slightly tousled from wearing the hat all day, but his eyes were clear as if he had just shed the final layer of disguise. From his leather wallet, he pulled out a silver badge. The afternoon light glinted softly through the clear plastic, illuminating the deeply etched words, Michael Foster, founder and executive chairman, New Dawn CAF. No one spoke, but the entire CAF seemed to freeze. Rachel stood motionless in the hallway. Laura swallowed hard. Jordan instinctively straightened his posture. Marcy dropped her stainless steel spoon into a tray. The metallic clink rang out clearly in the air that had just been emptied of sound. Michael put the badge away, then pulled out his phone and dialed. I need HR at branch number 12. As soon as possible. Bring a full copy of the past 6 months' shift schedules and internal camera data from the front register. He hung up and placed his phone gently on the counter. Then he turned to Laura, still frozen, unsure whether to speak or stay silent. "You know who I am now, don't you?" he asked, his voice not loud but sharp as steel. Laura clutched the report in her hands. "I didn't think you didn't think I'd show up," Michael interrupted. "Or didn't think a CEO would sit here all day just to observe how you treat your team," Laura stumbled for words. "I was just managing in the way that fits each branch. The internal policy allows some flexibility to adapt. No." Michael's voice was firm, his eyes piercing through each word. "The policy comes from me, and what you're doing completely violates the core principles of New Dawn transparency, fairness, humanity." A male employee quietly turned on the display behind the counter. Footage from the internal security system came on screen, cutting straight to the moment Laura took tips left specifically for Rachel and dropped them into the shared tip jar, then redistributed them however she pleased. Another clip showed Rachel wiping tables while the shift schedule posted on the board had no mention of her name, even though she had clearly been working that same shift for weeks. Michael pointed. "This is no longer suspicion. This is evidence." Laura looked like she wanted to argue but couldn't. Rachel still said nothing, but her hand clenched the plastic bag handle so tightly her knuckles turned white. Michael looked at her, then turned to address the entire staff. "I didn't build New Dawn to become the biggest calf chain. I built it so that anyone working here, from the milk steamer to the floor cleaner, feels that they matter." He walked to the shift board, removed the plastic sheet, and flipped it over. The back was blank. "Rachel's name isn't here. 6 months. She worked here 6 months without ever being in the system. She worked the morning shift, then rushed to a gas station for the evening shift, then picked up another night shift at a restaurant only to sleep in her car afterward. While we had extra shifts, extra tips, and more than enough silence." Greg, the elderly customer, nodded slowly. "You said it right." Michael turned back to Laura. "Do you have anything to say?" Laura opened her mouth, then hesitated. Her face slackened as if for the first time she realized she had lost complete control. I was just trying to keep the store running efficiently." Efficiently, Michael let out a bitter smile. "If efficiency means your best employee can't afford to live, then we might as well shut down the entire system." He looked around, then stopped at Rachel. "Do you still have today's payslip?" Rachel quietly pulled a folded piece of paper from her apron pocket and handed it to him. Michael unfolded it. The number was so low, it could hardly be considered reasonable. She worked enough hours for a standard shift, but this is what she actually received. Jordan stepped in, speaking for the first time. "I had the same thing happen my first month, but I was an official employee, so it got adjusted." "Rachel had no one to fix it for her," Marcy said softly. Michael nodded, then turned to the center of the calf. "Who here has ever seen something that didn't feel right but didn't dare to speak up?" One by one, hands were raised. No need to name names. No need to ask more. "Thank you," Michael said. "Starting today, no one here will have to lower their head out of fear anymore." He turned to Laura. "Effective immediately, you are suspended. An independent oversight team will work with you this week. And if what I saw today is truly the system you've been upholding, then this won't just end in suspension." No one defended her. No one objected. Because for the first time, someone had stood up. That morning, the air in the calf no longer felt the same. Not because someone shouted, not because customers reacted, but because for the first time the truth had been laid bare on the table and no one could look away. Immediately after the confrontation, Michael Foster called an emergency meeting with the regional coordination team. Within the hour, an HR representative from the headquarters arrived at branch No. 12. Laura was asked to surrender her access badge and was suspended from all operations to facilitate the internal investigation. There was no room left to hide. All report schedules, handwritten notes, and security footage were to be backed up and forwarded to the independent audit team. Rachel, still standing quietly by the espresso machine, seemed like she hadn't yet fully grasped what had just happened. But when someone from HR approached and handed her a signed employment contract from the central system, she clenched her sleeves tightly just to keep her heart from overflowing. "We've retrieved your entire work log from the POS," the representative whispered. "As of today, you are officially employed by New Dawn. And this is the back pay for the past 6 months." They handed her a sealed envelope. Rachel received it with both hands, her eyes unblinking as if holding something too fragile yet too precious. Michael stood not far away, silently witnessing. He didn't need to say anything. His actions were speaking loud enough. A technician entered and went straight to the barista station. Within 15 minutes, a real-time tipping system was activated. A touchscreen installed next to the espresso machine displayed each order, the server's ID, and the corresponding tip sent directly into each worker's internal account. No more plastic jars. No more shared evenly as the shift lead decides. Each person earned what they worked for. Instantly, Michael approached Rachel, calling her by name for the first time. "Rachel." She turned, eyes still red but no longer trembling. "You don't have to walk home anymore," he said, his voice low but resolute. "From now on, anyone who works at New Dawn, no matter the position, must be able to live." Rachel bit her lip and nodded. But she didn't speak. Because if she did, she feared she'd break down. By the espresso machine, a technician stuck up a new sign, white background, thin black letters, but clear as day. "Every drop of coffee deserves a life of dignity." No logo. No footnotes. Just one sentence and the whole caf stood still. Michael looked around. Greg, the elderly customer, stood up, placed a hand on Rachel's shoulder. "You did good, kid." Jordan handed her a tissue and Marcy nodded repeatedly as if to say, "We saw it. And we're with you." Once things had settled, Michael signaled it was time to leave. He didn't rush. He quietly slipped on his windbreaker, holding a notebook now full of scribbled notes. He walked slowly toward the door, but just before he reached the handle, he stopped. He turned back, his eyes landing on the table by the window where Rachel was now seated. For the first time all morning, she wasn't standing. She was eating a simple breakfast, a muffin, some fruit, and a cup of black coffee. The kind she always served, but never got the chance to enjoy. On her tray sat a meal voucher for official employees, something she once believed she'd never have. Rachel didn't know she was being watched. But Michael saw her hands no longer trembled.
Her shoulders were relaxed.
And her smile for the first time wasn't forced, wasn't guarded, didn't carry an apology before it appeared. He stepped out of the caf, sunlight spilling across the doorway. As the door clicked shut behind him, Michael thought to himself, a caf doesn't just sell drinks. It restores dignity for those who quietly live right every day.